Hi, good evening. I'm Steve with Marks Marine. We're going to go over the service intervals on your Yamaha Outboard motor. We're going to show you as an example on the 4-stroke today. However, you may have a 2-stroke, and I will show you the differences. There are various similarities between the two. First thing we're going to talk about today is the cowling and the outside of the motor, often overlooked. What you want to do is you always want to check to make sure that the latches are nice and smooth, easy to open. This is the rear latch on this particular motor, and on the front latch, and these are both working perfectly. What you want to use as a coating on this motor is a nice, good grade of marine carnauba wax. Thin coat, and then just buff it out. And you want to do that once a year. If you do that, then you won't have any corrosion problems. The bird droppings won't penetrate your motor, and it'll stay nice and shiny. Use all that on the case. The only thing that you would not wax, of course, would be the propeller. If you wax the propeller, you're not going anywhere. So stay away from the propeller as far as wax go, but you do want to. First thing we're going to check, we've got our cowling off, is we're going to check our fuel hoses and the fuel system to make sure it hasn't deteriorated any. As you notice, our fuel lines come in the front here. You want to check to make sure that they're supple, not stiff, and there's no cracking. Come back and check your fuel filter. It should be nice and clear with no debris in it. Check your main hose lines. On a carbureted motor, excuse me, you'll have multiple lines, and you want to check those. You always want them to be soft and pliable and not brittle. If they are brittle, you want to replace them. Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about is oil change and what you'd normally do at your 100-hour or once-a-year service interval. On this particular motor is a 4-stroke, so you have the oil carried in a chamber below the motor. A 2-stroke does not use that. 2-stroke has the oil injected or added to the fuel. So this particular step on a 2-stroke you won't do, but on a 4-stroke you will. Right here you'll see your oil filter. Here's our dipstick, and on the back is our fill. On Yamahas they're coated yellow. And what you're going to do is you're going to attach your hose attachment to the flush adapter on the side. And you're going to run the engine at idle until it comes up to operating temperature, and then shut it off and let it sit for about 10 minutes. In the back of our motor here, up inside this tube, is a drain. Right up inside here, you want to put a suitable pan underneath here and open this up, and then open this, and the oil will drain completely from the pan. Once that's accomplished, we pull our dipstick and we fill our oil through here. You want to put in 4 quarts on a large motor like this. If it's a smaller 4-stroke, of course, put in approximately 2/3 the amount that you normally would use. If it's an 8 horsepower, which uses 1 quart, you'd put in 2/3 of a quart first. Make sure your drain plug is in before you put the oil in. Once you've done that, once you get 4 quarts in, you want to level the motor like this. Fire the motor up for a moment. Make sure she's building oil pressure. Shut the motor down, let it sit for a minute, check your level, and then fill till it's full, the proper amount. In particular, on the large Yamaha 4-strokes, they like to have the oil 1/3 to 1/4 down on the dipstick, not completely to the full mark. 1/3 to 1/4 down. And that's how you change your oil. Now remember, anytime that you run the big motor, you want to have your flusher hooked up. You want to have either a side muff flusher hooked up, or in the case of a small motor, you want it in some kind of suitable container with water. Never run the engine without water. When the engine's not running, you can turn the water off. Okay, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to do a compression check. Now on a 2-stroke motor, normally you'll see 2 banks of spark plugs or a single bank of spark plugs. On the 4-strokes, they cover them with a cover plate, so you'd have to remove this cover plate, then remove the spark plug wires, remove the spark plugs, and then you're going to use a compression gauge. Now you want to rotate the motor 5 times. The best way to do that is with a starter button, but you can, in a pinch, pull a safety lanyard out and have a partner turn the motor over 5 times, and then you could check the compression. What we're looking for is within 10 pounds on an adjacent cylinder. What I mean by that is if we have 4 cylinders, you can have one cylinder that's 10 pounds less than the other as long as it's not over that 10-pound mark. Anything over 10 pounds is going to indicate some kind of cylinder problem, and you want to address that as soon as you can. Once you've done that, you want to gap fresh spark plugs, or inspect the spark plugs in the case of a 4-stroke, because you may get 200-300 hours out of a set of spark plugs. In that case, you just want to inspect them, then reinstall them, and torque them to the proper torque. Okay, the next thing we want to check at 1 year or every 100 hours. Best time to do this is in the fall. Is on a four-stroke, we have a timing belt. It's underneath this cover. So you would remove the cover, inspect the timing belt for any cracking, glazing, or any lines. If it has any of that, then we want to replace that timing belt. Also under here is a thermostat, and its job is to keep the engine at a certain temperature for best fuel economy and to keep the engine running warm. Those thermostats have a tendency over time to get clogged up with debris. It's a good idea at 100 hours to 200 hours, which is your first year, at least every other year, to pull those thermostats and examine them. What we're looking for is debris hanging the thermostats open. If they are, there's a couple of different ways you can do it. You can compress the spring and remove the debris, or you can put them in a pan of hot water, bring them up till they open, being very careful and remove the debris, and then just reinstall them. You want to do that really about every other year, ideally. Okay, and last but not least on the power head, you want to go through and you want to check your head bolts to make sure they're tight. They're going to be very exposed on a two-stroke. It's always a good idea to check those and make sure that they haven't loosened up any. And the other item that you're going to want to check is do a visual inspection down around the base, which is down around this area. And what we're looking for is any exhaust leaks, any oil leaks, or any water leaks that might occur down the base. If you do get that, then you're going to want to refer to your service center for that, because that means that you've got a leaking base gasket or a leaking power head gasket, and that's something that's much easier for them to take care of than you. Okay, the next thing we're going to check is the power trim and tilt unit. We want to check for good, smooth operation. You do that by raising, lowering the motor. We're going to raise this motor all the way up. Okay, what we're going to do is raise our motor all the way up, and we're going to put it on its little service arm, which is right here. And this is for safety. To take a chance on the motor coming down, we don't want to do that. These motors are very heavy. So we're going to lower that down until it seats solid, and now we're safe to work on this motor. What you want to check for is remove this plug right here. This is your power trim and tilt fluid plug, and the fluid level should be even with the bottom of the plug. If the fluid level is not even with the bottom of the plug, you just want to fill till it is, and then you put your cap back on. And the other thing you want to do is you want to take a little grease and you want to put it on these little rams right here. As you can see, we've got just a couple of drops here. Any of you folks that have experienced squeaking, loud, squeaky noises when you're raising and lowering your motor, that's because this lube is worn off of these rams, and you need to put a little drop of grease on those. And that'll take care of your trim and tilt. Safety stand. And we're going to talk about our gear case. On our gear case are two drain screws. The drain fill screw at the bottom, which is located right here, and the vent screw, which is located at the top. Now what you'll do is you'll put a suitable pan underneath this. We'll pull this bottom screw first, then we'll open this top screw, and all the fluid will drain out. Once the fluid's all drained out, we want to lower this motor down to where it's level. We want to put a suitable pump. We offer them in our accessories department, and the pump will go in the bottom, and you actually fill from the bottom till the fluid runs out the top. The reason you do that is the gear lube is very thick, and you could develop an air bubble in it if you tried to fill from the top. So pump it from the bottom till it fills through the top, then put your top one in, put your top vent screw in, and then take your pump with one hand, take your plug with the other hand, and as you remove this, plug this in fast. They allow for a little bit of fluid to come out when they figure the amount of fluid that's going to be in it, and that's all there is to changing that lower gear lube. On your propeller, you want to periodically, once a year, take the propeller off, examine the prop shaft and the prop shaft seal, make sure that there's no fishing line or anything back in this section. Put a little bit of lube on the drive shaft, put it back on. We want to torque this to 65 foot-pounds. And then at this same time, you want to examine your prop, make sure there's no cracks, no dents, anything that can throw the balance of the propeller off. If the propeller's in good shape, you got your prop shaft lubed, you got your prop nut torqued. Okay, and last but not least, you want to check your control cables for binding. Never shift a control cable when the motor is not running. You can run it up on the flushing device at idle, and then check, make sure that the prop area is clear, and then check for forward and reverse. It should smooth out. It should shift in and out very briskly, and without ratcheting. Never ease a control in. Shift it solid, and that should do it. If you have any other questions, contact me or Tony here at Marks Marine at 208-772-9038, and we'd be more than happy to answer anything we can for you. Thank you very much.